Hello, everyone. This is Pastor Kevin O'Brien at Mansville Lutheran Church with another edition of Pastor Ponderings. And this week, I want to explore something that might seem simple, but you'll see why I think it's not quite as simple as people think. And that is, how do we read the Bible? Now, I'm not talking just literacy, like how do we read it, but how do we understand and dive into the Bible as our book of faith and what kind of truths that it holds for us. And it might be a little more complicated than you think. I'm going to talk about three reasons that this is. First off, is you probably know the Bible was not written in English. The Bible is a translation of several different languages, namely Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, that were written over almost 1,000 years of history that the Bible's individual pieces were written in. And so when translators have to take these Hebrew or Aramaic or Greek and translate it to English, a lot of times there's a lot of meaning or nuance or connotation that gets lost in that translation. A very well-known example of this is the word love. In English, we have the word love, and it means many, many things. But if you take Greek, they actually have separate words for each of these kinds of love. They have a separate word for romantic love, say between spouses, a separate word for the love that God has for creation, a separate word for love between people who are best friends, who are comrades, who are willing to die for each other. There's different words for all three of those circumstances, but in English, we just have the word love. And so if you don't understand those connotations for love or for many, many words in both in all of the original biblical languages, you can lose out on a lot of the ways that it is supposed to be read. And not just with love, but in really, really significant pieces of the Bible. If you don't know the original languages, you can be missing out. And so that's complicated. And that's why translators, I don't envy them. They have a very difficult job to make all these really tough decisions of what word fits best for the original language. Secondly, the meaning of words, even when they are translated well, change over time. I like to think about the word freedom here. Now, as an American citizen, when I hear the word freedom, I think about freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the freedom that I, as a person, can make decisions to control my life, that there are consequences to those decisions, but they're decisions I make. And most of all, very much so, freedom means that I have control over my own person. Nobody is forcing me to work, namely slavery, right? Slavery and freedom do not mix. But when you go back to biblical times, Paul, who wrote many letters in the New Testament, talks about freedom all the time, that in Christ we are free and that our faith frees us from many, many things. But he also talks in his letter to Philemon about Philemon's slave returning to him. Now, Philemon's slave was a Christian and believed in Jesus, and so insofar that he is free from that. But Paul never talks to Philemon about freeing him from slavery because the word freedom to Paul meant something very different. That today we would say, well, of course, freedom, slavery is abhorrent. But Paul didn't necessarily make that connection. The word freedom has changed over these thousands of years. And languages, even the same language, changes over thousands of years. English has done this. Go back 1,000 years. What did English sound like? Probably for you and me, we wouldn't even understand it. It is unintelligible to year 1000 English to year 2000 English. Even in between that, if you go to like Shakespeare, many of us have difficulty understanding Shakespearean language. there is 1,000 years of language in the oldest to the youngest pieces of the Bible. So even within the Bible itself, language has changed, let alone the meanings of words like freedom and other complex words. They have changed. So we have translation issues, we have time issues with the meanings of words changing as we mature together as a species, and also, and possibly most importantly, context has changed. Where we are talking about has changed. Some things that were very important to Paul are no longer really important to us in 2020. And conversely, things that were not very important to Paul might be incredibly important to us now. So maybe he didn't spend nearly enough time on it because he didn't need to in the years that he was writing. But we would like to see him write more on this because it's a much more important issue. The controversial example I have of this is Paul's writing about women. Now, there are many parts of Paul's letters that Paul comes across as incredibly sexist. He talks about women not speaking unless spoken to by their husband, by a man, about women covering their hair, about women walking behind a certain distance from their husband and being humble. None of those fly in today's society, and they shouldn't. Paul was not writing to 21st century Americans, and I would bet, and most theologians would agree with me, that Paul would not have written those things if he knew what 21st century America was like. But he was writing to first century Rome. And there's an entire Bible study I can go on onto this, but the important thing to know about that is what Paul was trying to say to these women at their time, to specific people in specific places and times, is that these women should be seen as being morally upstanding, as ethical women. At that time, that's what that looked like. So what we glean today is not that women should be covering their heads or asking permission to speak. Goodness, no. But what should be seen is that all Christians, it is important that we are seen by the world, other Christians and non-Christians, as being morally upstanding, as being ethical peoples, because that reflects on our faith in God. And that's important. So the point here that Paul is trying to make in these is lost in the context of what he is speaking. Things that hearers would automatically assume in first century Rome get lost on us in 21st century America. So we need to know those contexts, and that's why it's important to study the Bible with people who are knowledgeable, or Bible studies that are knowledgeable that can help lead that. So I hope you get the impression from translations, from the way language changes and the way context changes, that reading the Bible is not as simple as picking up a verse and saying this is true and that is it. There's a lot more nuance and a lot more love that can be shown to the Bible than just proof texting in it. Thank you so much for joining me on this Pastor Ponderings. Like and subscribe to our Facebook page and to our YouTube channel, and let me know either directly or through the comments below topics you would like to see in the coming weeks about faith, about how it implicates us in modern times, or church history, or Bible stuff. Love to hear your thoughts. Thank you once again, and peace be with you all.